CBS News has obtained a law enforcement bulletin from the New York City Police Department, warning that polling sites are potential targets for extremist violence. Officials say there have not been any credible threats to polling sites as of now, but they caution that the current political climate, as well as harmful rhetoric online, may encourage extremists to target political rallies, voting sites, and poll workers. This bulletin comes after police in Phoenix arrested a man who allegedly broke into the campaign headquarters of Katie Hobbs, a Democrat running for Arizona governor. No word yet on what he was looking for. Meanwhile, early voting is in full swing. More than 7.5 million people have already voted, either by mail or in person. Some states have even broken records set during the 2020 presidential election. So those votes are being cast, and they're being cast safely and without incident. For more, I want to bring in CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa and CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane. Scott, I'll start with you. What are you hearing from poll workers and election officials about this, the fear about this election?
Well, some of them say the threats haven't stopped since 2020, directed at election administrators and election workers, that it's been a kinetic, ongoing thing. One Michigan county official told me not only does she have the sheriff's phone number on her phone, she has him under a VIP contact just to have that open line of communication. All of the voting so far in early voting has been safe and secure nationwide. But listen to what Ingham County, Michigan elections administrator Barb Byram says about the situation election administrators are facing in her state.
Certainly, many of my colleagues have received threats since 2020. Whether they're county clerks and local clerks have received threats, and some have opted not to continue serving in office. And that is some of them have completely left the job and taken with them decades of experience. But I am not going to shy away from a fight. I will make sure our elections remain safe and secure in this county.
John, on a Justice Department briefing, the Department of Justice said these threats are more frequent in certain states, the states that were competitive and combated in 2020 in particular, Michigan being one of them.
Bob, you've been out in one of these competitive states. Well, you've been in all of them, but most recently in Pennsylvania. What are you hearing from voters on this score?
And John, I hope you can assign me to go back there to cover the World Series if I can. Look, voters are watching this democracy issue. I was at Penn State University over the weekend, and it was a football game, and so most of the attention was on the Penn State-Minnesota game. But I peeled some people away from their tailgates, and I said, hey, what about politics? What are you hearing? And, of course, the kitchen table issues, the economy, front of mind, crime, abortion rights. But democracy, election security, these are things that people are talking about, now sometimes in different ways. When you go across Pennsylvania, like I did over the past week, some Doug Mastriano supporters say the election in 2020 was rigged and stolen, a false statement, a lie. But they believe it, and they believe Mastriano, a Trump ally, was doing the right thing by trying to overturn the 2020 election. And others in the more suburban, centrist areas of the state, they say that they're very concerned that former President Trump is looking at Pennsylvania and trying to change election law in the state, where mail-in voting is now a regular thing, a routine process for many voters. Trump had a meeting, CBS News has learned, back in September, where he encouraged his allies to get in there in Harrisburg and overturn that mail-in voting law.
Scott, you and I already have both mentioned on this program that the voting has taken place and it has been safe so far. Is there concern that these warnings could discourage people from voting or motivate, or I guess on the other hand, it could motivate some who wouldn't otherwise have voted, who feel prompted by the idea that somebody's trying to steal the franchise from them?
It's not a concern. It's a significant concern that this is a disincentivization of voters in the midterm elections, where the voting base is sometimes a little more fragile. Sometimes if the weather's not good or they've got a busy day, they may not go to vote. You add in this prospect and reports of threats, they may be even less inclined to go vote. That's a concern. We spoke about that with the author of the new book, The Big Truth, co-written by Major Garrett and by David Becker, a former Justice Department official. Here's what he says about these warnings of election threats and the impact they could have on voters.
There are people in this country who want people to be afraid of voting, who want people to think that their votes don't matter or that it's going to be hard. That's false. There is no question that right now we are as safe and secure in our election process as we've ever been, and voters have more choices about how to vote than ever before.
There are tens of thousands of polling places across America, and what the warning we see is remain vigilant when you go to them. But voting is safe, voting is secure, but these false election denialism claims do give rise to the threat of extremist groups.
Bob, if we can kind of raise up to 10,000 feet here, or maybe 30,000 feet, what do you think are the component parts that contribute to this? I mean, obviously, there's January 6th is a part of it. There's the rhetoric. As you've been out on the campaign trail, what do you think are some of the things that are in this awful stew that have created this situation where people are warning about violence at the polls?
Sometimes, John, in journalism, we like to say we're not the story, but in this case, we're part of the story, journalists broadly speaking. Sometimes the answer is also right in front of your face. I spent most of the last few days sitting outside the state capitol. I actually spoke to you last night from outside the state capitol in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And when you go around that state capitol these days, it's different than 20 years ago. When I remember going to see 20 years ago, Ed Rendell, then the mayor of Philadelphia, won the gubernatorial race in 2002, going in January of 2023 to watch his inauguration just as a political junkie and a young guy. And the Capitol press corps in Harrisburg was big back then in 2003. You saw a lot of reporters. And now you go around state capitals like Harrisburg. Yes, there are some specialty news services, some strong local news in some respects. And I mean, to say this with all respect to those covering state capitals, but it's a diminished beat, not just in Harrisburg, but across the country. And when you have lax coverage of state capitals comparable to a decade ago or 2 decades ago, so much of what's going on in these states, whether it's trying to change election law or change policy on certain fronts, goes unnoticed. People then live in the silos of social media. They go deeper into those silos. There's not a common currency when it comes to facts and information, especially when it comes to politics. And it leads people at times, and I encountered this on the road, toward conspiracy and lies, and sometimes not with bad faith. They just drift that way.
It's really interesting. Scott MacFarlane in Washington and Bob Costa, soon to be at the next Phillies game for us. Thank you both.